All right, we're back at you with another episode of Under Further Review. We have Kev, we have Mike, and Steve here, and we have a lot to talk about. It's been over a week since we last recorded an episode, but before we get into it, don't forget to support the page, as I usually say, but all the support goes a long way for us, so whether it's commenting on one of our social media pages, following one of our social media pages, subscribing to our YouTube, it certainly helps. So join the conversation. We are pretty active on all those pages, and we're going to be active with clips throughout the week. So a lot of this will be current now because during the season, when you record later in the week, some of those games are not fresh anymore. But, these topics now during the off season, it should be a fun off season where we get to talk about segments, we get to create our own segments, we get to talk about burning questions that we think are important leading into the season. And of course, we've kind of been advertising this, but we're going to be doing the NFL draft as well. Already have a lot of fun guests lined up. And speaking of guests, I'm going to throw it in this episode just because I'm doing the interview shortly after we record this episode. But J.J. Buchanan, who is actually Michigan's newest wide receiver added to their roster and had a really solid freshman season at Utah. So he's following his old coach, Whittingham, over to Michigan. Did an interview with him. I'm going to throw it in this episode at some point. I guess we'll decide, later on in the episode when it's going to come. But it's going to be here regardless. So we have a lot of fun segments and conversations today, so stick around. But we wanted to get some of the important stuff out of the way. We're going to start with Darian Mensah. So the Duke quarterback, it's been quite the story. I don't even know where to start. I don't know if I can fully explain what's happening. Mike, I don't know if you have a full grasp on it. So to my understanding, Mensah tells Duke that he's going to come back. He signed a deal. It's very early in January when he confirms that he's going to be the starting quarterback for Duke next year. And this is your quarterback who threw for close to 4,000 yards last year, threw a ton of touchdowns. It's just a true talent. Someone we've talked about on this podcast is someone who can rise in the NFL draft rankings next year with a solid play next season. So he's certainly someone you would want to watch out for. Duke thinks they have their star quarterback coming back. And then on the very last day when players can enter the portal, there starts to become rumblings that Duke is concerned that Mensah is going to enter the transfer portal. And then later on in that day, he makes it official by declaring that he's going into the portal. Doesn't stop there. This may have been the messiest portal, transfer portal edition that I've seen. And we saw a pretty tough one with Washington and Williams. But Mensah goes to the portal. Duke is kind of upset because they believe their quarterback is coming back. It's the last day. They didn't even talk to other quarterbacks during the whole transfer portal process. And then they tell Mensah that they're going to take him to court. So it plays out for we're a week and a half, 2 weeks later now, where we finally received word that there is a settlement that Mensah can enter the portal. Or he was in the portal, but now he's going to be able to join a new team, which the indications all point towards Miami as being that team. So I don't know if I explained it correctly there. I think I got the gist of it, or gyps. What's the proper wording?
Gist. The gist.
Yeah, I'm saying the wrong word here. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this whole thing? Because I think you feel for both sides. You kind of feel for the player who wants to go play at a location that's willing to pay him. And the package seems like it's really player friendly. But you also feel for the team that loses their quarterback and now has to try to find somebody that's going to take that spot.
Yeah, I mean, so it's like a super weird situation, and I actually wish there was a Spark Note rundown of this, but it doesn't seem like Duke's issue was with him leaving to go to Miami. That, I know a lot of people have said that was what they were trying to stop from happening. That apparently was not it. Apparently what they were, he could have gone to Miami either way, and I think the issue was specifically, if I understand correctly, and again, there's so many moving parts, was that he had signed a name, image, and likeness, an NIL deal where he gave up his name and his for product, so Duke was able to sell his jerseys and things like that, and he had signed that over to the university for, I don't know, I think it was like a $4 million deal, or it might have been more. And that was what the hang-up was that Duke was arguing, you can leave, you can go to another school, but you can't give them your naming rights. We have them. Which, to be fair, is that really the hill to die on for Duke? I don't know. And then the big thing here is at the end of the day, regardless of what Duke did, he was always leaving. So and I've said it a couple times when we've talked about it, was this even worth it? At this point, you cut your losses. You're not going to consider them employees, and there is no CBA, which means they're pretty much just taking, I don't want to say free money, but they're not going to be held to a standard that like an NFL player is going to be when it comes to contracts. So I feel like Duke kind of wasted their time. It sucks, and I get it. They literally had a future set up, what they felt like with Mensah coming off of an ACC championship game with him, and I mean, statistically he was outstanding. And I don't know how he didn't get more notoriety this year as a player with what he did. Duke lost, arguably one of the best quarterbacks in the country to not only, a team within conference. I mean, Miami's a national championship contender, and I'd argue now Miami's got a better quarterback than they had with Beck. Actually, I don't even want to argue it. I'm going to tell you, Miami upgraded at quarterback, and unfortunately, Duke's kind of left here holding the bag. I'm sure that I was just trying to look up real quick. I'm sure that the settlement is simply that Miami probably paid Duke for the name, image, and likeness, which I'm sure was always going to be the case. He's probably, obviously he's freed up now to enroll in an NIL deal with Miami. Yeah, it's messy. It's real messy. And unfortunately, when college athletes who we don't want to call professional athletes, or the NCAA doesn't want to call professional athletes or call them employees, things like this are going to happen. I honestly, this offseason has been really messy with NIL. I can only imagine how much worse it's going to get as time goes on. It's not going to get better. So yeah, my thoughts on this: Miami came out of this looking great. They got, a guy who's going to lead them probably to potentially, they have him this year, probably makes it more, they might even win a national championship with him, to be honest, with the weapons that Miami has and how good Mensah is. So yeah, I do feel bad for him. They don't look the best in this. Mensah definitely doesn't look the best in this. I don't think anybody's going to blink twice about what Miami did, because I'm sure we all kind of, I don't think we're shocked. So yeah.
We were all kind of expecting them to find a transfer quarterback, whether it was Mensah, Moore, or somebody else.
I mean, they apparently never gave up on until they knew they had to give up. They were still trying to get, Ty Simpson out of the NFL draft, and when that clearly didn't pan out, and, you've got Moore obviously going back to Oregon, you've got, Raiola, who is at Oregon, and it became clear that no players that they had sought were coming. They had to make a move somewhere, and the Mensah thing, whether we like it or not, made a ton of sense. Duke probably had no business being in that ACC championship game. I know they won it, but they probably had no business being in it. And Mensah's probably the best quarterback in that conference. I think we can all agree he is the best quarterback in the ACC. It's kind of slim. He was easy pickings if you think about it for Miami. They came in, they offered him a bunch of money, offered him, hey, we'll take care of you, get you out of your deal, and they did just that. Duke obviously wasn't willing to go to what Miami was willing to do, and also, to be fair, Duke can't offer Miami what Miami can. Miami's a big program that's going to compete for a national championship, and that's just not Duke. This is going to do wonders, I think, for Mensah. I'm sure he'll get questioned on it next year when he enters the draft. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard not to love it from a projection and development standpoint for Mensah. I mean, now you just have another quarterback we're going to be throwing into the pool of super talented guys in 2027.
Yeah, my thought on that, and by the way, Duke's top receiver, Cooper Barkate, followed him afterwards, and all indications is saying he's going to go to Miami as well. So alongside Tony, now you're getting Barkate, who's an excellent wide receiver. But I think there's a few areas that we failed in, and specifically, I think the biggest enemy of this whole thing, and they've been the biggest enemy for years now, is the NCAA, because they are doing nothing to fix this whole NIL situation.
They caused it.
Yeah, they did. They caused it. But also, it's when the transfer portal opens. And a little bit later in this episode, I want to talk about what Josh Pate offered for the NCAA playoffs, the college football playoff, because I thought it was really smart. But the fact that Miami's making this run, and I don't even think Miami knew they were going to go this far in the playoff. They barely made the college football playoff. They squeaked by Texas A&M, and then they start rolling after that. They beat Ohio State, and the rest is history. They eventually get to the championship game. They lose a close one to Indiana, but it's pretty damn hard, in my opinion, to keep up with the transfer portal while also preparing for a college football playoff game. And it's like, where do you put a majority of your focus towards? Do you put it towards the preparation, where as a coach, if you want to win the big game, you have to put in hours and hours of watching tape and all that good stuff, and your assistant coaches should be doing the same thing, and your players should be doing the same thing, and then you're out on the practice field, and you should be sleeping and breathing that next game. But meanwhile, the portal opens up on January 2nd, and you have to be thinking about your 2026 team and trying to get talent for that team. And Miami is just known for, the past few seasons, they found Cam Ward, they found Carson Beck, and now Mensah is going to go there. So they always find their quarterback in the transfer portal. They always get talent in the transfer portal. But this year they lost out on a few guys, and I think I would credit that to the fact that they were thinking about this next playoff game. And they couldn't really sit there and go back and forth. And I know you have general managers now, and they should be offering packages and all that. But Lane Kiffin's sitting courtside at a basketball game with Sam Levitt while Cristobal is getting ready for a college football playoff game. So I think that's a little unfair because while these players are coming over, a lot of these teams are offering similar packages, in my opinion. Maybe somebody beats them by several $100,000. Maybe someone beats them by $1 million. But it also has to be feel as well. And I think that's what it came down to for like a Sam Levitt type where he had a pretty good relationship with Lane Kiffin. I think he enjoyed his stay at LSU. He got a nice package in NIL as well. And it was a done deal. It checked off all the boxes for him. So the NCAA failed in that side. But I think it was a slimy move for Miami, too. It was a desperation thing where they're sitting there, they're panicking. 2026 isn't looking that great. They're like, who's going to be our starting quarterback? We lost out on every single player that's been in the portal so far. We're going to make a call to Duke's quarterback, Mensah, who we know is extremely talented because we play him in the ACC, and we're going to offer him something that Duke cannot offer because they don't have the NIL type of money that we have. And on the final day, when Duke's sitting there with their legs up and they're getting ready for spring ball and the spring semester, we're going to just rip their souls out and take their star quarterback. So that part's slimy too. The last part, I didn't love how Duke handled it either. If a player, Mensah's in a situation where he can improve his stock and he could get to the NFL, and who knows, maybe one day he starts for an NFL team. But right now, like, we have to look in present day for these players. What is going to be life-altering money? I'm sure he got a pretty good NIL deal with Duke, but was it what Miami probably offered as a Hail Mary on that final day? I don't think so. It probably didn't come close. And from reports, they're helping out family members too. Apparently, his sister is supposed to be coming over, and she plays a sport as well. So there was a lot of moving parts to this. I think Miami was, like I said, feeling desperate, and then they said, we're going to give this young man everything that he ever wanted in life just to come over and play quarterback for Miami. And how can you say no to the money and a team that was just in the national championship game? So I think those three, like Duke trying to hold him back, trying to take him to court. Originally, he was supposed to meet Duke in court in February, so he wouldn't be able to sign with Miami till February, which means he wouldn't even be able to practice with Miami till the summertime. He wouldn't be able to partake in spring ball. So that would have been an issue. So Duke didn't handle it the best, but Duke's upset because Miami comes in the last second and tries or does successfully steals their quarterback. And the NCAA. So like, there's three enemies here. There are three villains in this picture. It's not Mensah, in my opinion. It is the NCAA, it is Miami, and it's Duke. How are you going to fix it? NCAA is not going to fix it. They're just going to let this continue to crumble over the years. We're going to continue to have these type of stories like Williams, like Mensah. It's just going to get worse and worse by the year. And no one's safe during the portal season. You could think your favorite player on your college football team's coming back during the first day of portal season. There's a handshake. There's an agreement in place. But then the last day, as we see, he could be gone. So just not a great situation. Not a fantastic look. And it makes you think, like, I know they're not considered quote-unquote employees, but do we have to make them employees at this point? Do we have to start saying you're signing a 2-year deal? Your buyout is this much money. If you want to go somewhere else, great. But your new school's going to offer me $2-3 million just to take you. Like all that stuff might have to come into play at some point, because how much of them are like picking a school based off of academics at this point? I don't know. I think the football is the top part. The money's the top part. Academics is way low on their list, probably.
And to kind of go off what you're saying about when it starts, like the whole thing with when it starts, like look at what happened at Oregon. They were shooting their like 4th, 5th string running back because 3 or 4 of them transferred before the second game in the playoffs. So it's just they need to like reevaluate. I know the NCAA is not going to reevaluate it, but it's just you're preparing for a playoff game, and then you got people not showing up because they transferred.
It's also similar to what happened to Penn State last year. Bo Pribula is their backup quarterback, and he was getting used in games. Drew Aller was obviously the starter, but they would bring him Bo in for running packages. And Bo wanted to be with the Penn State team during the playoff, but because he would have lost out on opportunities, he ultimately sat down with James Franklin. He did it in a respectful way, and he decided to enter the transfer portal before the playoffs started. And because he was in the portal, he wasn't able to celebrate with his teammates and go through the playoff experience that they went through. He had to, and he eventually ended up at Missouri. Where do you end up now? Is he Virginia, right? He's at?
Yes, he is.
So it's.
But I don't even know. Well, that's a conversation. I don't even know if he's going to be the starter.
Yeah, they got two quarterbacks in the portal, right?
Yeah, I mean, but I'm sure that he either collected some good money or, it's is what it is.
Yeah, it's just, from that standpoint. Luckily now they keep the portal open a little bit later if you make the national championship game. But does that help you when all the other teams found their positions of need and now you're getting the portal and you're kind of crumbs? It's hard. But speaking of becoming employees, I kind of wanted to talk about what Deion Sanders is implementing for Colorado. It's been rough for Deion. What do you have, like 2-3 wins this year? It was a tough year.
I think it was it 4 wins? I don't know. He wasn't very good.
Yeah, it wasn't a good season. I would almost say they probably underachieved with Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter there because there was a good amount of talent. Didn't really have a defense though, but I think the expectation was to at least make a high bowl game or even the playoff at some point. But I think Deion Sanders, he's sticking to his no-nonsense mode. So day one, when he gets there was a video that came out, and he told like half the room they weren't going to be there by spring bowl. And he did that. A lot of them parted ways. He had a whole new roster when the spring came around. So he's a man of his word. So now he has expectations. They plan to issue fines to players for misconduct. Some of the fines include late to practice, $500, no-show, $2,500, late to meeting or film, $400, no-show to meeting or film, $2,000, late to conditioning, $1,000, no-show conditioning, $1,500, late to treatment, $1,000, no-show to treatment, $1,500, violation of team rules, $1,000 to $2,500, and public or social misconduct, $2,000 to $5,000. I'm going to say this before I get your opinions. Good for Deion Sanders. If these players want to come in and they want to demand all this money, and they think they have the higher ground, then there should be fines for when they don't act appropriately or act the way that their university or now their place of employment, even because they're getting paid, expects them to act. So I think Deion putting his foot down and saying, you want to be like a professional, you want to get paid like a professional, I'm going to treat you like a professional, because in the NFL, if you do this stuff, it's not going to fly. And I hope they start doing this with like later games in the season. No sit-outs anymore. If you want to sit out a game, you're going to get fined money. It's kind of like a holdout in the summer for the NFL. And if you want to miss a bowl game, you're going to get fined because you're not finishing off your NIL deal. So good for Deion Sanders.
Yeah, I think you're like, so the biggest issue is that obviously the NCAA doesn't want to call them employees. That's what this is all based around. They don't, and I feel like Deion doing this, I agree with it. I mean, there should be penalty. These guys are getting paid, tons of money to play, college football. But I think you're really starting to really infringe on that, when you start doing the fining about them becoming employees, which, I mean, to be honest with you, is going to be the conversation for as long as I still, I personally have told you where I stand on the NCAA. I think that they're going to get worked out eventually, and we'll have two super conferences, and they'll both realize they don't need the NCAA anymore. But you're really gonna get to the point where the NCAA is going to have to make a decision: are they employees or are they not? And then deal with the ramifications of that based on how teams respond.
Well, Mike,
yeah,
I jump in there. Let me ask you this, because sometimes there's like code word for stuff. I know that college football, the NCAA, they refuse to call these players employees, but these players are way different than like you and I when we went to college, or when anyone goes to college. We might get scholarships, but we're not getting paid to go to college. If anything, we're getting an education so that one day we can get paid, enough to survive in this world. But if I go work at the university's library. I'm a university employee. Doesn't matter if I'm a student or not. Why are we giving these players hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars and not considering them employees? Because it's way different than the average student. They are not your average student, actually. Most of them don't plan on finishing college anyways.
It boils down to that amateur status. Or, at that point, you've given them contracts. They're making millions of dollars. Are they still amateur athletes? I'd argue they're not anymore. I mean, if we're being honest, they're not amateur athletes anymore. Some of them are making more than professional athletes are.
Yeah.
And for some of them, this is the most money they're ever going to make. The quarterback obviously tends to get the most money. We see that. And just going back on this year, the top quarterbacks that transferred, I don't, some of them, I don't know, I'm looking now, but are getting paid top money. Like, for instance, a guy like, let's go with a guy like Sorsby. Do any of us think that he's going to end up being a first-round pick next year? A second-round? I don't know. I wouldn't expect him to be. Whatever he ended up making, $4.5 million or whatever he's getting to go to Texas Tech, that's probably the most money he's ever going to make. And to be honest with you, he's at Texas Tech because he wants to make that money. So it comes down to amateur status. That's what the NCAA is trying to protect. And I mean, just being completely transparent and honest, they're not amateurs. They're getting professional. They're not getting professional contracts. They're getting name, image. Everything's hidden behind the NIL label. Name, image, and likeness. Everything's hidden behind that label. But the reality is we could use Mensah. I mean, he's leaving Duke because Miami gave him a better contract. Whatever you want to call it, NIL. Hey, here's a bonus. Whatever you want to call it. It's just like an NFL without free agency. For the most part, it's like the NFL without a protected free agency. I don't know. I don't know what comes with losing the amateur status label on college football. I'm sure there's a lot of ramification, and that's why they're protecting it. Personally, don't know what it is. I'll have to learn it because I'm sure people will kill us in the comment section on socials for not knowing and talking about it. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a slippery slope, but I think you kind of just got to take that leap and slide down the hill because we're already there.
And I would say in all essence, this is kind of like, I mean, I know we don't talk about or even follow this sport really.
If you bring up soccer, I'm going to get on a flight.
Is like soccer.
I'm a fly to where you live. I won't dox you, and I'm just going to shoot you.
Similar to the soccer, like how soccer.
No, I agree. Soccer is buyouts and stuff, and
yeah,
I agree. Like, I mean, we most Americans don't watch that though. It's what I equate soccer to?
The Big 12.
The Big 12 football. Most average Americans don't. You know what? I'm not going to make this political. I did have a good zinger there, but yeah, most of us don't watch soccer or Big 12 football because it sucks.
I would argue in America, Big 12 football is more heavily watched than soccer, unless the World Cup, which is about to happen this summer, and then it's watched like crazy.
Listen, when it comes to watching football, you got the SEC, the Big 10, and then you got a little drop off. Well, a lot of drop off, and then like. Then there's the ACC, and then there's the Mountain West. I'll even throw the Pac-12 with the two teams they got, and I'll watch Sunbelt and MAC before I get to the Big 12.
The Pac-12 is going to have, I think.
Give me some Conference USA Delaware football,
The Pac-12 is going to have 8 or 10 teams this year, though? The Pac-12 is going to have like 8 or 10 teams, aren't they, this year?
Yeah, but I mean, like God, no. I'd have to look at the names aren't.
I think Boise's one of them.
I got to be honest. The Pac-12 and the Big 12 are kind of the same to me.
Yeah.
Just being honest. Yeah, Kevin's right. When it comes to soccer, they've got buyouts on contracts. They have transfer windows.
Yep.
But again, like, they're professional athletes, right? So are we talking about college kids and amateur status, or are we talking about professional athletes with transfer windows? I think it's a slippery slope, but also, like I said, I maintaining that amateur status and saying they're student athletes and stuff. I mean, I think that's what the NCAA is protecting. What would come from that if they end up losing that status? What's to stop an NFL team from signing one of these guys? Or I understand that NFL players can't enter the draft for X amount of years, but if they lose that amateur status, does that still apply? I don't know. If you're an NFL team and you're so sold on, I don't want to use a quarterback because that's kind of a tough one, but let's just say like the guy that transferred to LSU, Jordyn Seaton, the left tackle, he's going to be a stud. So what's to stop you as a 20-year-old kid from stashing him? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what comes by losing this amateur status, but that's exactly what's going to happen. They're going to have the conversation. Are they amateurs or are they professional athletes? I think they're professional athletes.
Yeah. I think the NCAA is just scared to call them professional athletes because now you're solidifying a lot of rules. And with rules is headaches and pushback, but You know, in the NFL, if somebody signs a contract, they're with that team. It's official. They decided their fate. But I think the NCAA is just so worried about their look with these teams, these schools, and they're kind of it's kind of like the player coach situation at this point. Like the players have the upper hand. Like if you don't offer them what they want, they're moving on. It's the same thing with like these schools. It's like you talk about it. You talked about it this episode. Like if the Big Ten and the SEC don't like something that the NCAA is doing, what's stopping them from saying we're just forming a huge conference and we're moving on and doing our own thing? I don't think the NCAA has the power to stop them, and I think that's their fear for one day that it could possibly happen where these schools just don't respect them and they're going to walk all over them. And I think that's why people are getting away with certain things now, when back in the day it would have been death penalties and major bowl bans and scholarships taken away, and now they're like
taken away,
slaps on the wrist. So
yeah, let's take away a Heisman Trophy. We all clearly saw that was won regardless, but then we're gonna give it back to him 10-15 years later. Don't worry about it.
Let's talk. I should have
just before we end that real quick, I just want to bring up, do you think Reggie Bush did you think he took the Heisman Trophy off his shelf, or do you think he kept it up there all those years?
They didn't ask for it back, right?
Even if they did, what's to stop him from being like, I'm gonna get one made?
Yeah.
But but that right there is why nobody has the NCAA has no credibility. It's stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the fact that the NCAA is a governing body. People think of it as like, oh, they're the overseer of everything. They're just the governing body. The teams still dictate what happens and what doesn't happen. As like, for instance, the college football playoff. The NCAA doesn't have anything to do with that. There's a committee that does that. You know what I mean? Like, they're just a governing body, and they're not governing anything really well. So at the end of the day, as these two conferences, move on.
Yeah.
The Big 12, the Big 12 will be screwed. Big 10 and the SEC, the Big 12 still needs the NCAA. The SEC and the Big 10, there's nothing stopping them from recruiting other schools. Let's just say that we talk about it all the time. They absorb those, the ACC conference, and sure, Big 12, and they form two big super conferences that play each other every year in the championship. As fans, we're not going to care. We're going to love it. We're going to choose a side, and we're going to love it. The NCAA is the one that's going to be left with nothing. But yeah, it's a mess.
But the other thing is, like, these agents are like dogs. You teach them something, they become comfortable with something, they become familiar with something, they're going to continue to do it. And right now, these agents are drooling because they know what they can get their players, and it's just becoming more and more appealing every single year. These contracts are getting fatter, the luxuries that they're getting, like, personal jets, cars, stuff like that. Like, it's just getting out of hand what's being offered to college students at the end of the day. Like, we fought for the longest time. I remember Jake Butt said something where he was like, I made like $900 a month because I had to work a job when I had some off time from college football in order to survive while in college football. And it's like, all right, they're going to give all this time to their sport. Let's pay them something. But did you imagine that it was going to be north of $5 million one day? It's just like, it's ridiculous. Like, the other thing for me is, I think the agents, I think the schools, I think the players are worried that the NCAA is not going to have the players' best interest, the school's best interest in mind.
I mean, they've proven that they haven't.
Well, think of it this way. Penn State, for example, I hate to bring up the Sandusky situation, but they got a 2-year penalty, and people did far less, and got similar penalties or worse penalties. Like, they've always protected the blue bloods. They've never shown that they have morals or the best interest of the sport in their mind. It's just,
they're just money hungry.
Yeah, they're money hungry.
And they've proven it every step of the way that they're money hungry. And even now, it hasn't proven. And you know what the sad part is we've talked about it a lot collectively, maybe not on the podcast, but collectively we've talked about it, is if the NCAA was just willing to give a little bit back and concede a little bit, they still could have maintained guardrails. But because they were so greedy, they let the trial play out, and they lost. Because they were so greedy. And I think in their minds, they thought there was no way they could lose. At the end of the day, you could have gotten maybe, I haven't really seen anybody try and say how they could structure NIL that would work. But, like, maybe if the NCAA was willing to give a little bit and let these kids, you know what? You can go out and sign an autograph with your name on it. You know what? Somebody wants to book you for a weekend, signing 150 helmets, 200 helmets, 1,000 helmets, whatever. It's your name. You can do that. But the NCAA wasn't even willing to do that. Now look where we're at. Now they're out there getting a $5 million contract, and they're still going on the weekends to sign those deals to sign football helmets. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there were ways to approach this in the NCAA completely screwed it up. And to be honest with you, they've lost all credibility. And if there's anything I hate more than Big 12, it's NCAA. The NCAA as a whole. It's an awful organization. It's poorly run. It's clearly corrupt. It's a joke. It's a giant joke.
It used to be like the Prohibition. Like Johnny Manziel would have to like put like a mask on or like cover up his face on
and like fly somewhere to another state. Like it was insane. And all you had to do is, you know what? It is your name. Go sign autographs. I don't care. Go sign autographs. You know what? You want to make your money that way? Go ahead. And then the football team could have handled the rest of it. Oh, you know what? You're late to practice because you're at an event? Sorry, you're sitting, you're done. Like, there were ways to handle it. I know that there still would have been people coming in, like, you know, Phil Knight dropping bags on guys like that. I get that. We could have figured that out. Yeah. But now we can't. The floodgate's open, and then you're not shutting the floodgate now. The players got a little taste of it. Watch what happens if the NCAA ever tried to bring it back and say, hey, we need to put guardrails on this. It'll blow up so bad in their face, it's not even funny.
But what's the end point here? Like, is it when
there's none?
When we start getting players asking for $15-20 million in a season?
No, honestly, you know what I think the end point is that you've got other sports that allow you to get drafted, you know, at a young age. And I know football is a very brutal sport, but I'm going to use hockey as an example here. You got kids, they avoid the whole amateur status thing by not letting them be amateurs. They're like, you know what? You're good enough. You're going to get drafted out of high school. You still have to do your time. You still have to go to school, whatever, for the year that they have to, or whatever it is. I think that's probably the point you get to, honestly. The only thing is then you're going to have NFL teams dictating where they want their kids playing. But I don't know.
What's stopping a league from coming in kind of like what basketball did? I forget what they called it. And saying, we're going to pay you way more money than the college, you know, teams or schools are able to pay you. And coming in and just totally ruining college football. I think that could be in the future, too.
I mean, isn't that kind of what the G League is doing, sort of, with basketball?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Or now you've got guys that are choosing to go play overseas or in Australia and Japan, you know, in China, instead of going to, I mean, to be honest with you, football I know is a different beast, and like it'll hurt. You know who that'll hurt the most is going to be the teams that are like the positions like a running back are the ones that are going to suffer from this. But yeah, I mean, what's stopping, you know, these kids from finding another avenue? I mean, I guess there's nothing. If something popped up that allowed them an avenue to go, I mean, it makes sense. But I think the first thing you got to tackle is amateur status. Are they amateurs or are they professional athletes? And there is a world where you could have both, right? Like,
they're low-key professional athletes because
I don't even think it's a low-key thing. I think it's like smacking us in the face every day. Like, it's obvious.
But these aren't even college visits during portal. Yeah, they like to do. I think it looks so corny, by the way, when they do the same thing as what the freshmen do, where
it's annoying.
They do the photo shoots and stuff. It's like, you've been in college football for 3-4 years. You don't need to do all this again. Like, just go.
Yeah, like I complained when it happened, but I want to know how much ESPN paid Dante Moore for that.
Right.
Like you guys were there. I was so annoyed by it because I'm like, why are we doing this? But how much money do you think ESPN gave him? Because I'm sure they gave him a bag.
Yeah,
definitely did. Yeah,
but I think the first thing to fix this, if you ever want to attempt to fix it, is you got to tackle amateur or professional. And like I said, there's a world where you can have both. Look at hockey. Not every kid gets drafted out of high school, but they still go to school and play against amateurs. Yeah. Like, I think you got to figure that out. And you know what? Unfortunately, then you're going to have the NFL involved, and you will have NFL teams dictating where kids go. But it's no different than what the NHL does for hockey. And I'm sure baseball, you know, MLB, you get kids getting drafted. I'm sure they dictate. Steve, you might know a little more about that, but I'm sure MLB teams dictate where kids go to play after they draft them out of high school.
We had people on our post writing about that when we talked about there shouldn't be freshmen unless you're like immediate impact, like, you know, Chris Henry this year for Ohio State, where he'll probably get on the field and be, you know, on the other side of Jeremiah Smith. If you're that type of player, then by all means go play for Ohio State. But, you know, some of these freshmen are going to lose opportunities because schools are going to start looking at, you know, third, fourth year, fifth year, senior. People were commenting on our post saying that, like, it's already happening in college baseball where, you know, you either have to go play JUCO ball or you have to go play Division II, Division III, and then once you prove yourself, now you go play Division I. But I hate that for these kids. It's like you do 4 years of being the best at your sport in high school, and now you got to go prove yourself again another, you know, 2 years or so. Like, it's just a backward system, in my opinion, if it ever comes to that.
No, it's tough.
You should be able to, like, if you put in 4 years and you're clearly the best person, you're the most talented, you should be able to pick where you want to go after high school. It shouldn't be like college baseball right now where these kids are going JUCO. I just had someone actually tell me a story. Their kid he was starting, but wasn't getting the playing time that he thought he should have got, and he was at a Division I school, and he entered the transfer portal kind of like an impulse thought, and he ended up at a Division III school because he couldn't find a home. And we seen that with football too. It's like these kids are they're getting wrong information from their agents too. Like that's also ruining the sport.
Yeah, somebody was talking about how agents will come in and tell these kids, "Oh, transfer, you're going to get money," and then these kids hit the portal and nobody offers them anything, and it essentially ends their career. And the agent drops them like a bad habit, like they weren't even there.
And that's where you're seeing the business side of things, and that's why we should probably reword this and say professional athletes, but they're scared that it's going to take away from the college experience.
I saw somebody say like that there was like 1,200.
Yep. That kids that will never play football, Division I football ever again, because an agent told them that they could make more money.
And I mean, you gotta think if you're like kind of lower and you're not like the best at your spot and you're transferring, how many kids are coming in that are seniors in high school that are coming in and trying to do the same thing you did? Like, there's so many people coming in. You can't just like. You can't give up your spot for what somebody else is telling you. You might there's always injuries. There's always something that could happen during the year that you get your shot.
Yeah, I pray to God that coincidentally, if somehow this podcast makes it across some kid that's considering the transfer portal, like please, for the love of God, if a team hasn't reached out to you, which I'm almost certain, obviously I don't know, but I'm going to say without a doubt, if a team wants you, they're going to find a way to contact you directly. Don't take the words of, your cousin Ken's brother, sister, whatever, is an agent and said, hey, I think I can make him more money. Like, please, for the love of God, you've got an opportunity to keep it. And if somebody else wants you, they will find a way to contact you directly. Yeah. Don't take the word of some sleazy guy that's trying to make money off you. Please, for the love of God. Like, and I'm sure this won't reach that kind of person, but if it does, just be smart. Like, I get it, you're kids, and somebody's going to come and wave a bag in your face. But, like, if you didn't hear it direct from the source, just be smart.
This is a good point, talking about tampering. Obviously, it's not going to be called tampering anymore, or it's just going to be called legal tampering, or you can just talk to any player that's on any school. But I really wanted to talk about the Dabo Swinney thing because you guys know by now what happened with the linebacker from Cal. So there's a freshman linebacker at Cal. He had like 90-something tackles this season. It was really impressive. His name is Luke Ferrelli. He commits to Clemson. He's gung-ho about it. He looks like he's excited to be there. He actually enrolls to his spring semester. He's in class, and he starts getting text messages during class from, first it was Coach Golden, I think, and he turned him down and said, I think Golden was trying to offer him like $1 million or something, which is huge for a college linebacker. And then they come with a second attempt where this time Chambliss and Jackson Dart, I believe, reaches out to him, and finally they're like, all right, well, we'll up it. Somebody said that they doubled that, maybe even offered him $2 million to come to Ole Miss, and he ends up leaving because he's like, all right, it's $2 million, like I need to take that, I'm not going to get that from Clemson. But that stinks because here's a guy who wanted to be at Clemson, settled in, was ready to start his career at Clemson, and then last second Ole Miss comes in. But I like the way that Dabo handled the situation. There was points of the season where Dabo looked in over his head. I don't think it was this. So he goes in a press conference and he basically calls out Coach Golden and he calls out Ole Miss for what they did. And he just puts them on blast. Like, if you want to handle it, throw out there to the public what they did. Don't take the kid to court. Don't ruin his chances of making more money. Go out there and put the other school on blast and say, like, we don't have a good relationship anymore. I don't know if that's similar thoughts that you guys have.
Yeah, I don't know. So I'm going to be honest, I wasn't completely familiar with the whole story. I'd seen bits and pieces of it, and I'm looking at it now. To be honest with you, Yahoo Sports article on this is fantastic. They kind of treat it like the mob, and they're like, college coaches have always operated under the code of omerta, which is like the big mob code where, you don't say anything, you don't rat. Then Dabo Swinney right underneath that, if you tamper with my players, I'm going to turn you in. It's wild. This whole thing is wild. I didn't realize how messy it was. I saw, I understood that, what was going on, but, the fact that they tried to, Ferrelli's agent tried to kind of blackball Clemson, so to speak, where they told Clemson, if you add an extra $1 million, we'll turn over the text messages from Ole Miss, incriminating him. And obviously Clemson declined that, and Ferrelli went to Ole Miss. Like, this is very, like, this one's better than the other ones, I think. This one's a good story.
Yeah. I feel like this one's a little better than Mensah.
Yeah, this one's more exciting than the Mensah thing. Like, this was, like, literally, like, you got Dabo, who is turned into a whistleblower, right? Like, that's going to affect his reputation. I don't know if it's going to affect it positively or negatively, but I give him credit because he's owning it. And he's like, you mess with my players, I'm gonna out you.
I don't hate it at all because it's Clemson versus the world, Dabo against the world, especially in this free-for-all transfer portal. Obviously, these coaches don't have each other's backs when they're texting their players while they're in class and trying to offer them something more. So like, why would I be happy about that? And honestly, like, Dabo has nothing to worry about because if Clemson doesn't work out and say he's fired at the end of this next season, he'll find somewhere to go. Whether it's a coordinator or he gets a coaching job right away, a head coaching job. I just think Dabo's at a point where he gives zero F's about what's happening. He's going to go behind a mic and he's going to let it all out to the world. And that, honestly, that's a little better than what Duke did, in my opinion. Because, like, Clemson could have obviously did the same thing, took this kid to court, tried to extend the period where he could sign with Ole Miss, made it a little tough on Ole Miss and the player. I think at the linebacker position, when it's not quarterback, like, maybe the school says, screw it, we're not going to wait around, we'll just go find someone else, Like, Dabo and Clemson could have made his life really tough if they wanted to, but they opted to just, go in front of the media, say what happened, and move on with their lives.
I actually so this is probably my favorite thing because, all things to it, Golden hasn't denied it or anything. Like, he's kind of just like, whatever, this is the way it is. And I see that there's a lot of people that tried to kill Swinney for coming out and saying anything, which nothing else has worked at this point, right? Like, it's being allowed to happen. So maybe this does something, but I do like that this isn't a failure to adapt. It's a refusal to enable corruption. And I think that's kind of true here. Like, it's, he's right. He's complaining that if there's no repercussions for guys doing this, then, that I'm going to out them and make it clear. The only thing that I would have to say is, and I'm not saying that this is the case, but, like, you shouldn't cast stones when you live in a glass house. It's one of my favorite quotes. If you don't think somebody at Clemson has done this or has attempted this, I mean, you better hope that they don't, because it's going to look real bad if it comes out that, Clemson reached out to such and such and offered them this when they were locked. You know what I mean? So there's that. But maybe Swinney does operate a very clean, ship, and that's that. But, I mean, if he does end up it's going to come up if he does end up leaving Clemson or loses his job there. He's going to have to recruit in the transfer portal, and I think he's going to have to do something he hasn't done in a while, in a long time, which is exactly this. I'm sure he's going to be doing the same thing, to be completely honest with you. But I don't hate this. Like, nothing else has worked, so try and put it on him and be honest and say, listen, he came in, texted my player. My player tried to shake me down. I said no, and they left and went right back to the school.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what other option you have available to you at this point. It's just going to look really awkward if he, in turn, does this, which inevitably he's going to have to do at some point and gets called out for it. It'll be funny. But this is more exciting than Mensah or even the kid from Washington. Like, this is so much more exciting. They operate under a code of omerta, and then Dabo goes out and says, nah, I love it. I think I just became a Clemson football fan.
Now the fun stuff. Let's kick it over to our interview, JJ Buchanan, and then we'll come back and maybe do a segment or two. But yeah, this is JJ Buchanan, the newest Michigan wide receiver. Fun conversation. So we'll be back shortly with the rest of our episode. So we're going to bring in Michigan's newest wide receiver, JJ Buchanan. Really excited about this. As many listeners know, I grew up a big-time Michigan fan, so having a player on the university that I grew up watching is just such a fun feat. I have to throw this out there first, JJ. By now, you probably heard it a million times, but you're actually the second JJ in the past decade to join the university. How many times has that been mentioned to you, do you think?
Yeah, quite a few, especially me and all the new people who are involved with the university. Yeah, quite a few times.
Yeah, just seeing everything that McCarthy and the rest of his teammates accomplished around the building, obviously a national championship, but they went and won 3 straight Big Ten championship games. How does that help you set a standard for this current group?
Yeah, definitely the standard has already been set. We all there's one common goal in mind, and we don't want anything short of a national championship. Obviously, Big Ten championship is kind of along the way in there, but yeah, there's no expectation less than those two things. So
Absolutely. And what better coach to do it than Coach Whittingham? That was a big storyline in Ann Arbor this offseason. He takes over as the Michigan's head coach. And you're familiar with him, obviously, because you were with him in Utah.
yeah,
Let me ask you, what makes him such a special coach? Because obviously you committed to him twice now, out of high school to Utah and then out of the transfer portal to Michigan. And like, what's that connection? Because obviously there is a positive connection since you decided, to stay with him as he made the shift over to Michigan.
yeah. There's a lot of things that are special about him. The thing that I'd say is the most special about him is his ability to, as he's been at Utah for 20 years, it's unheard of in this era of college football, and his ability to have set up program and been able to be at that program for 20 years. A lot of the staff at Utah, not a lot of people know this, but he's had the same staff for most of his time there. Obviously, he just brought Coach Beck and Coach Simon and Coach Coy there, but he brought them all with him. But his most special trait is just his ability to be grounded in a program like that for as long as he had. It's unheard of, and I think that sticks out the most to him. That sticks out the most about him.
Yeah, is that something that like because you had, I think I was reading like 15, 16 offers, and we'll get into it in a little bit because I thought it was so fascinating that you had offers on both sides of the ball. Usually people zero in on, one position that they feel like you stand out at, but yeah, that's really cool. But the fact that you committed to him over those 15 other schools and um, I guess stuck with him. Did longevity play into that? Just knowing that he was someone that was going to be there for his players, and the fact that he had such a winning pedigree behind him, were those huge factors for you?
Yeah, for sure. Culture was a big part of it. Obviously that came with the rest of the staff, Coach Scally, Coach Witt, Coach Freddie, who was actually the one recruiting me at the time, along with Coach Scally, both of them kind of. But yeah, I really just committed for them. And the culture that he had built there was amazing. And they had a really good roster coming in. I felt like I had a chance. I had the best chance to go over there and play right away, which was my goal. And grateful enough to be able to do that. So I found my best opportunity to go there, play early, and the culture were probably the two things I committed there to Utah originally for.
Absolutely. And when you finished out at Utah, so you guys play in the Las Vegas Bowl, and you're
Yeah.
facing Nebraska. You beat them by a good 20 points there,
Yeah.
and you had quite the game. 4 catches, 76 yards, a touchdown pass, a really nice touchdown pass or catch on your end. And it seemed like you had such a positive connection with the quarterback, Devin Dampier, and Utah was bringing back some players on the offensive side of the ball. Um,
Mm.
did that make it hard to move on a little bit, just knowing that you ended on such a strong note and that some of the players that you did have a relationship with were returning next year?
Yeah, I made it public. It was the hardest decision of my life. The first hardest decision of my life was committing to Utah. The second one was takes the cake. This was the hardest decision I've had to make as a human being. It wasn't easy. I had a lot of conversations with a lot of different people. It wasn't easy telling Coach Scally I love him. I think he's the right person for that job. It wasn't easy telling that new offensive coordinator, the new receivers coach, all these different people. It was hard. But at the end of the day, I committed to this staff, and I believe that this staff will gives me the best shot at what my goal is, which is to be in the NFL one day. So
Absolutely. Can you walk us? I don't want to dig too deep, but can you walk us through like what those conversations are like when you're sitting there and you're like really contemplating if you should go to a new school because you had, well, for you specifically, you had the relationships with the staff, so that probably played the biggest factor. Do I stay for the players in the locker room, or do I go to the staff that I committed to? And I'm sure there was a lot of back and forth. You probably sat down with your family and friends, like. What goes into those conversations?
yeah, a lot. I mean, it's just a multitude of things, and it's hard to put it into it's hard to put into words. Honestly, it's just like following my heart, part of it. Because I really was just so unsure of everything at that in that week that I was kind of deciding. But a big reason for it was, first of all, the multitude of, or not the multitude, the how big the University of Michigan is as a program. I mean, it's just any way you slice it. Utah is a great program, but Michigan is a bigger program, and it is a bigger kind of segue into the NFL. It just historically that's the way it is. Not saying like Utah's, like I said, a great program, and you can get to the NFL from Utah, but it's a bigger platform to get there. And at the same time, not having to learn a new system was very intriguing to me. Coming with Coach Beck, Coach Simon, um, I already know the whole offense, so that's one less thing that I'd have to do. If I stayed at Utah, I'd have to learn a new offense, and I don't know if that offense would be as easy to learn as Coach Beck's. And I'm already so immersed in this offense that it's all that's on my mind. So not having to learn a new system was a big thing for me, and I just think that it allows me to come here and make the transition a little more seamless. I don't have to spend hours studying a new offense. All my coaches are here. We're all going through the same stuff, moving far from family. So, we can kind of all bond in that way. And yeah, it really came down to how big, just how big of an opportunity this is, and the system.
Yeah, you talk about a big opportunity. It really is because the past three national champs have came from the Big Ten.
Yep.
And every conversation you have about college football, it's the back and forth between the SEC and the Big Ten
Yep.
conferences. And by now, I mean, as a football fan, probably growing up, you watch the Michigan Ohio State rival game every single
Yep.
season, and it's all people talk about once you get to Michigan. I'm sure is that date in November when you face Ohio State. But the Big Ten, it's just no slouch. I even think of like the Purdue game this year, 9-4 Michigan. They finished in the top 25. It was a young roster, really strong and athletic roster, but Purdue, who finished at the bottom of the Big Ten, gave them a hard time on the road. So like every week you have to show up in the Big Ten conference. What have you specifically heard so far about playing in the Big Ten conference and playing in that big rival game against Ohio State?
Yeah, just that it's gonna be the biggest stage that I've ever played on in my life.
Yeah.
That's what I came here for. I came here to play against the best in the country. Not only once a year, but every week. You walk into whatever stadium you walk in, and they're some of the best guys in the country. So I've just heard that the atmosphere is electric. The competition is top of the line, and those are things that I'm interested in involving myself in.
Absolutely. And one thing about Michigan is always known for the running game. They have Jordan Marshall back. They're bringing in a top recruit in Savion Hyder. But just a loaded, Cusdale's back, just a loaded backfield. But the wide receiver room, for the first time in the longest time, people are excited about this receiver room. Andrew Marsh is coming back. Brought in Jamie French from Texas. Moa, right? Am I saying his
Yeah.
last name right? He's number
Listen.
third. Yeah, he's number
Yeah.
39, I believe, in the recruiting class. So he should be like a immediate impact on the field. And then yourself, who it sounds like you're making the transition full time to wide receiver.
Yeah.
Um, uh, what's that been like for you? Because like now there's so much talent in that room, and also like you guys are going to be competing for, I guess the ball coming your way, targets in some way.
Yeah.
How are you going to handle that? Just having so much talent and sharing reps and everything.
Well, first of all, this is what we all signed up for. We didn't sign up here for, no competition, just walk on and don't have to do any work and you're in. So we all knew that coming here. It's gonna be a loaded receiver room. So we all have to show up to work every day. Just like everyone else. You gotta earn your reps, you gotta earn your targets. And I think that the good thing about this offense is it's so diverse that, people can come in, come out, everyone will get not everyone will get what they want in terms of targets, but everyone will get a good share. And I think that we all are prepared to fight honestly every day each other for the reps and the targets, and I think that's something that we all know that it's going to have to happen. So
Yeah. And mentioning the switch to wide receiver, you're used to that because I heard in another interview you first entered Utah as a athlete on your profile, right? So you played linebacker, safety, it sounds like, receiver, tight end, and you got recruited in all those positions. So you're used to kind of switching around the field. But what went into like I guess the decision of becoming a full-time receiver and just the fact that you have played all over the field, how does that make the transition a little easier for you?
yeah, so actually, I don't even know if people know this, but I got recruited to Utah. I'm pretty sure I committed as a safety.
Oh,
Uh,
that's awesome.
oh yeah, I had offers at all four positions, but I committed as a safety. But I really just as I went on in my season, I really just wanted to play offense. And Coach Freddie he was reaching out to me like asking me to play tight end. So we had a mutual agreement that I would go over there and be more of a receiving tight end, but I would be in the tight end room with Coach Freddie. And as fall camp went on, as the season went on, I think it was after week 2. It was right before the Wyoming game. They changed me to Coach Whittingham, Kyle Whittingham. He changed me to receiver. He put me in the receiver and with Coach Simon. It just made more sense. I was always in the slot or outside. I wasn't doing any inline stuff. So I just would learn more directly about my position if I were to switch into the receiver room. So yeah, it was kind of just a conjoined effort with Coach Freddie, um, Coach Witt, and Coach Simon to switch me because it just made more sense.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for it because, talking about receptions at the end of the season, it seemed like you started to really turn it on
Yeah.
at Utah. Obviously, the Nebraska game I mentioned, the Kansas game, you had 65 yards in Kansas State, 74 yards. You had a pretty solid game against Baylor.
Mhm.
What went into such a successful end of the season for you?
I think it just has to do with confidence. I was a lot more confident. Getting a lot more reps helped me, get more of in a groove. I feel like earlier in the season, it was kind of in and out, in and out, in and out. But as it got later into the season, they needed guys to step up, and I was one of the guys who was able to step up, and they were keeping me in for longer periods of time. So I was getting in the rhythm a little bit more, and so me and Devin were just connecting better at the end of the season.
Yeah, and earlier in the season, you got to face a team, Texas Tech, who made the playoff, and
Yeah.
everybody raved about their defense all season long. I guess that experience right there, was that defense as tough as everybody talked about on paper?
Yeah, they were good. I honestly didn't really play that much that game, but I got smacked by I forget who it was, but yeah, no, they're solid.
Yeah, yeah, good squad right there. What are like for you personally now that you're settled in? Spring semester started. You're starting to do workouts with the team. Like, what are your personal goals moving forward up until the season?
Up until the season, I'd say just work. Honestly, get on top of all my school stuff. I wanna build that relationship with Andrew, Jamie, Bryce, all those guys. I want us to be well connected for going into the season. So we're just another step ahead of everybody. But yeah, I'd say I just want to build a connection with them. Yeah, and just continue to work with the whole team and work towards that goal.
Just continuing off of that, you were ranked as 94 overall in the transfer portal, which I feel like the difference between like freshmen and transfers, they're a little bit harder with their rankings on
Yeah.
transfers because you're veterans now, you got a taste of the game and everything.
Mhm.
Um, Knowing that like that ceiling is there, what like is that pressure for you to live up to like what people expect from you, or like is the expectation just from your personal self?
No, I personally don't really think pressure exists. Honestly, it's all about perception of what people think of you at the end of the day. I think is what pressure is. And, at the end of the day, I have an expectation for myself. So I guess living up to that is a kind of pressure. But, from outside noise, it doesn't affect me whatsoever.
Yeah. Do you think Coach Whittingham would ever let you do like a Travis Hunter thing?
Um, maybe, but honestly, I don't even know if I don't know. I'm pretty cool at receiver right now, so I think we'll just stick to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're in a great spot. Excited to see what you can do at Michigan. I think this is a great team coming back, and bringing in talent like yourself is just going to make it better.
Yeah,
But
thank you.
that was JJ Buchanan. That was awesome, man. Thanks a lot for joining us. Good luck with the rest of the off season and heading
So,
into the season as well.
yes, sir.
Hopefully you can bring back another national championship for Michigan.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, that was JJ Buchanan of Michigan. So we're going to close out with a fun segment, but I do want to get into something from another podcast. So we're big fans of supporting other podcasts and other media personalities. I don't even know if you can call us media personalities at this point, but Josh Pate certainly is a media personality. And he's someone who's very opinionated. Most of the time, in my opinion, or I believe he says a lot of great things, but there's some people that believe some of his takes are wild, and he's looking for clicks or whatever it may be. But something that Josh Pate did, it certainly was, it defeated the purpose of getting clicks because a lot of people did watch this video that he put out. But I think it defeated the purpose for something that he truly believes in and he wholeheartedly wants to see college football do. And that's fix the college football playoff structure. So I'm going to read this back to you guys because I think neither of you watched the clip. So this is your first time hearing what he believes in. So when I listened to it, I saw a lot of positive things pop up on Twitter. A lot of people were retweeting what he said and said this actually makes sense. And then I listened to the clip and I was like, that's perfect in my opinion. It kind of brings some of the traditional aspects and has like that new age approach as well. So it's like a 6 or 7 step thing. So just hear me out here. And I'm going to read it off my notes because it's rather long. So his first step is he wants to move week 1 to where week 0 is, and this will set up a revolutionary Thanksgiving weekend. Step 2, conference championship games will be Thanksgiving weekend instead of the weekend after. Step 3, bowl season has been rendered largely irrelevant compared to what it used to be, he says. So he's taking the shock panels, and this is his exact words, and rubbing them together, putting them on the chest of bowl season. Wants to take the bowls, doesn't care which ones. It could be the Pop-Tart Bowl, it could be the Cheez-It Bowl, the Citrus Bowl. I personally hope they get rid of the Mayo Bowl because I get skeeved out every time they dump that on the winning coach.
It's my favorite bowl season. That's my one. Duke's Mayo Bowl's the best one.
Listen, Will Levis would drown in it and love it.
But he wants to take all the teams in conference championship games, take them off the board because they're already playing that weekend. It would look like this. So this is what this season would have looked like. Indiana, Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, Texas Tech, BYU, Miami, Virginia in conference championship games. Oregon, Utah, Ole Miss, Michigan, Texas A&M, Arizona, Oklahoma, USC, Texas, I messed this up. It was Oregon versus, I wrote Utah twice. Texas was playing Utah. I forget who he had Oregon against. It was someone else. Notre Dame, Vanderbilt for bowl games. So they would be playing in these bowl games. They are also college football data points, he says. So if you win these bowl games, you get more data points towards the college football playoff. The day after Saturday, on Sunday, is Selection Sunday at 9 a.m. So he doesn't want to interfere with the NFL, so he does it in the morning. Round 1 happens a week later. It will be on campus and held the first weekend of December. Round 2 of college football playoffs held on campus the following weekend, so the second week of December. Round 3, finally going to kick it to a neutral site because he felt like he had to. It's going to be the third Saturday of December. You take a break for Christmas, and the national championship game is held on New Year's Day. Crown a national championship, and the season is over. Portal opens up January 2nd. Let it run for a few weeks. Also have National Signing Day around that time, and then get prepared for the spring semester where all the students can participate in Spring Bowl. So that's pretty much what he's taken away from that. I personally think I like the schedule mostly because it takes away from player or teams being rusty. Some of those teams that, are the top 5 programs and they fought all season and they performed the best all season. And now they don't have to wait 2-3 weeks to play football again. They just jump right into it. I think that's pretty clever. But I wanted to see what you guys thought because I like what I heard.
I feel like when like you were kind of going through that, it kind of reminded me of, I feel like Dan Lanning kind of said the same thing at one point. So, I mean, I do think that they do need to fix everything about like bowl season and the playoff, because I do think, I mean, coming from even last year when Oregon waited what, like 3 4 or like 2 3 weeks and got
I mean, this year Indiana had off almost a month.
yeah,
But they were the only school that really
and like, I mean, even the second round of the playoffs, 3 out of the 4 teams lost that were on buys. So it's there is a lot of rust. So I feel like they need to get move the schedule up so that teams aren't waiting that long. I know it's good for them because they had a long season and they might be using it to get healthy, but you're also losing your game reps, and the game reps are more important than just going against your regular like your defense, because it's not the same atmosphere, it's not the same live action that you're going to get, and like you can only practice it so much instead of it being the real deal.
Yeah, the one thing that I'm going to say that I take away from that I really liked is that extra game that the non-conference championship teams get to play. Because this year, I know that it popped up where Vanderbilt, when they realized they obviously weren't in the SEC championship game, they tried their best to schedule an extra game, even though it was never going to work out. And it might have just been lip service, but the idea was right, is that if they could just get one more game in, one more win, one more chance to show that, they are deserving, they felt that they'd get into the playoff. So I actually do like that. You give the teams an extra game to show. I assume in this situation the CFP wouldn't rule on, until after the conference championship games, obviously. Everything would stay the same. I mean, yeah, in this situation, there's a chance that, Texas finds their way into the college football playoff. Vanderbilt could find their way into the playoff. There's a chance where Ole Miss misses the playoff because they lost. I really like that extra game for the teams and getting it out of the way early. And it might avoid teams from like where a lot of these teams get gutted because the guys are like, well, there's nothing left to play for, so I'm just going to go prep for the NFL. Maybe they choose to stay because they can still chase a championship. And also, like you said, it does give, I guess, it brings meaning to the bowl games for these bigger teams. Well, if you want to watch meaningful bowl games, with the exception of like Texas, Michigan this year, most of the other ones are just kind of like when the bigger teams get in, it's kind of like, you got to watch like low-level teams play in the bowl games to see any kind of heart. I think this kind of spices it up. And you could still have your other – I love bowl games and bowl season, but you could still have your other bullshit bowls along to continue the bowl season going while all this is happening, right? Like, yeah, that's the first I've heard of this. I didn't see it. I can get behind it. I think there's a lot of pros. I'm sure there's some cons that would have to be worked out by people much smarter than us. But he kind of nailed a bunch of things down and brought – one of the biggest issues is making people give a shit. You can't teach people to give a shit. They have to. And you kind of force it by, now these bowl games are actually can get you into the playoff, that extra game. So, yeah, I think I can get behind that. I like that.
Yeah, it sorts out the schedule for December. You know where you're going. It just feels, it almost feels like college football again. Because, like, I think I looked at the schedule next year. And the national championship game's not till like late January, like January 26th or something like that. And that just feels like college football should have been long done. Now, like, we're in the heart of the NFL playoff schedule. You're competing with the NFL. You're not going to win that battle. The NFL is going to win.
Yeah, why would you even want to?
It doesn't make sense. So, like, the schedule, this kind of talk where, like, there's positive feedback, it gets the ball rolling. Whether college football decides to make a change or not, that's up to them. They have shown that, because to my understanding, actually, the NCAA has nothing to do with the college football playoff, I think I've been told. So this is like a committee that makes the decision. They decide who gets to get in, gets to go into the playoffs, which we've had questions about. Like, why did Miami get in over Notre Dame was a question this year. How did Alabama squeeze in? Like all that stuff that's been floating around. How did we get two teams like James Madison and Tulane in? You throw them in these bowl games and it shows their true colors. Then, like, now you don't have to have them in the college football playoff. So you kind of give those mid-major teams a chance. So we're kind of fulfilling that part, but you also don't have to include them in the final 12. Because they had their chance in that bowl game to prove themselves against a bigger school. like this. I have a few questions about it. Like what? Like, say Alabama loses the SEC championship game. What happens to them? Like, do we fault them? Again, that conversation comes up. Do we fault them for making the SEC championship game and losing to Georgia, or do we put them in because they were in the SEC championship game? But now, how do they line up against a school that won one of their bowl games that maybe wouldn't even stand a chance if they weren't in that bowl game? You know, like take for example Michigan, who lost their biggest games of the season. They lost to USC, they lost to Oklahoma, and they lost to Ohio State. They didn't make the Big Ten championship game. Say they go in and they beat. He had them playing against Ole Miss. Say they go in and they beat Ole Miss. Is that a big enough victory where Michigan leapfrogs a team like Alabama, who was in the SEC championship game? Like that, it's still going to have
I guess that's why he said there's data points, right? Like not necessarily, but then you're putting on the negative to this. Like I said, the con is you're putting a lot on this committee to get right, and they very rarely get anything right. So there's still going to be cons.
Yeah, I don't know how we still have 12 teams going into next season. That to me,
I like this as well because I mean you're almost making it like March Madness has like a playing game like for that bowl game. So I mean, honestly, if they want to do that too, like in that during that like conference championship weekend like time, I feel like that would be like it gives more incentive for that week like that weekend. So
yeah, I mean, it also comes down to like the big reason why it didn't expand is because they couldn't agree on auto bids. Like the Big Ten wanted. I'm just throwing a number out there. The SEC and the Big Ten wanted 3 each or something. I don't know if that was the number, but that was the big thing is they wanted more than just the conference champion to be an automatic bid to get in. And I can't fault the CFP for being like no, but then at the same time, you're going to allow Notre Dame to cakewalk through a season to just all they have to do is break into the top 12 and they're an automatic bid. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. And to be fair, expanding the playoff isn't going to fix this. Like now we're just going to further our argument, right? Like we were like, if we had 15 teams this year, then you could have squeezed Texas in, you could have whatever. But we're going to have 15 teams and then we're going to be like, oh, if we had 18 teams, we could have squeezed so-and-so in. Like, I don't know if expanding it, I would love to see an expanded playoff because it means more meaningful football. I don't think it's going to fix anything. And this, like I said, the CFP and the NCAA are still screwed up. Like I said, giving Notre Dame an automatic bid, they don't belong to a conference. I understand they're a moneymaker and all that, but like, come on. Like they schedule their own games.
I was about to say, how many of their games next year are going to be good? Because
you know what? I will get you that answer. You two talk, and I will get you that answer.
It's not. Yeah, it's a cupcake schedule. But another thing that I really liked about this is like player opt-outs and team opt-outs even. We're not going to have to deal with that anymore. Like you could put some of those like lesser bowls throughout the month of December just to keep football going for like those college football fanatics like the three of us where we'll probably watch it when we have nothing to do. And that gives like Navy and like Army and like schools like on that level a chance to play more football. But I mean, like these bowl games, like these fun ones, like the Cheez-It Bowl, the Pop-Tart Bowl, the Citrus Bowl, like ones that a lot goes into these games. Now you're going to have teams traveling. You're going to have players opt in because they still have a chance. It's a lifeline to make the college football playoff. It just makes the sport fun again because that left such a bad taste in my mouth when like schools like Notre Dame and like what was it, 10, 15 other schools said we're going to opt out of the bowl game. Because even with like having seniors not want to play because they're going to go into the NFL draft, it's still fun seeing like the next generation of talent for these teams. You say that, and then half those guys enter the transfer portal, but I don't know. I still like seeing Michigan play. I sat down and watched them face Texas this year and get beat pretty bad, but I got to see guys that they retained this season. So, from that standpoint, you get to evaluate the talent that's coming back the following season. But, now you're going to be in a situation where you have bowl games and these guys have to play, because their team's still playing meaningful football. So it will be a win all around. Did you find it?
Yeah, I just want to add how much this schedule's bad, like really bad. They play Wisconsin. I don't think anybody's expecting Wisconsin to do anything against them. Then they follow it up playing Rice. Then they play Michigan State, Purdue. Then they go to North Carolina. Then they play Stanford. Then they play BYU. Then they play Navy. And then finally they get their first. I'm sorry, BYU fans, but you're not good. Then you get Miami, which is going to be the only game that they're tested on the schedule. Then they finish it out with Boston College, SMU, and Syracuse. So but you should penalize them. Like if they lose that Miami game, like I'm not not to be like, unless one of these teams somehow has a resurgence, and the only team that's probably, in my opinion, that's going to end up being a ranked team is going to be BYU outside of Miami. Let me look at that again. Yeah, like when season's end comes, and I'll give BYU, they'll be in the top 25 somehow, some way. But like, I'm not impressed. Like I'm really not. So a one-loss Notre Dame team, especially when their one loss is probably going to come against Miami. Hey, listen, if they go undefeated and they beat Miami, because Miami I think is going to be a better team next year than they are this year. Okay, I'm not going to say anything. But if they lose that Miami game, and especially if they don't compete, well, I'm sure it'll be competitive. But if they lose that game against I don't know, what a one-loss Notre Dame game against the schedule doesn't impress me. Like I'm sorry, the schedule's a joke. They took, and I hate to be that guy, but they took bottom feeders from the Big Ten,
Big 12,
the ACC. I'll give them. They got Miami on the schedule. Whatever. Rice. Like, excuse me, what? And then you've got BYU. I guess their idea was, I don't know what BYU finished this year, like 14th or something. I don't know. I don't even care. But then you play Boston College. You play, Stanford. I don't know, man. This schedule's a joke. SMU.
To go off that like Miami scheduled game, who says they probably already have a contract that's in place for?
Well, yeah, they do. I mean, that's why they play Stanford. That's why they play Navy. Like these are scheduled games. Like those are scheduled games with contracts. And I understand that people will be like, oh, well, the SEC plays one crappy game where they're playing like Abilene, Texas or whatever the hell the college is called. But like,
they're in a conference.
They run a conference. Like they're in a conference. They play tough teams. Like every week, and then I don't know, man. This is ugly, and the NCAA never should have agreed to this.
Well, two things on that. Notre Dame ran from USC, which is a long-standing rival game between the two of them. It was actually one for a while that I look forward to at the end of the season. And the second thing is, we now have the Notre Dame rule in place where if they finish in the top 12, they have to get an automatic bid into the playoff, which goes into effect for next season. No other school, and this defeats the whole like, you don't have a conference that you play in, go find one, go join the Big Ten, go join the ACC if you have to, like do something that's going to help your case, because they threw a hissy fit at the end of the season and kind of went after the ACC conference and said, we have a bad relationship, we're not going to play your teams anymore, blah, 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 whatever else they said. Their AD, I think, came out and said all that stuff. I don't like being a, what's the wording? Non-conference. What are they?
Independent?
Independent. That's the word I was trying to think of. I don't like being an independent and having your own rule in place. I get that you're Notre Dame and you have history behind you, and you're almost always in the top 25, but it's just like very particular to Notre Dame. And how's that fair to a school, like Ohio State, who's in the Big Ten, plays all the Big Ten schools, and if they lose a game or two, that they're looking at a chance of not being in the college football playoff, So it's just, why does Notre Dame get this rule and no one else does?
Also, like, you shouldn't be allowed to remain independent as long as they have. Like, at some point, there's got to be a penalty. Like, I'm not saying like a financial or anything penalty, but there's got to be a penalty. Like, if you don't join a conference, odds of you making the playoff are going to be slim. Listen, if they're an undefeated team, I'm not going to argue it. Like, I'm really not. Truthfully. And even if they're a one-loss team, depending on what their schedule looks like I'm not going to argue they're a playoff team. I get that. But, like, come on. If you're scheduling, and to be fair, next year is a very soft year for them, and then it does get harder. I'm looking here at their future games. But next year, they get their first auto bid, and they're going to cakewalk into the playoffs. Unless they regress and there's some serious problems there. But, like, yeah, I got to be honest. Losing that USC game is unfortunate. They obviously are locked in with BYU for quite a few years, which I guess that's their replacement maybe. I don't know.
Yes.
We can make that like a religious dogfight. That'd be pretty cool. But, yeah, I mean, starting 2028, it's not a cakewalk anymore. They got to play Texas in 2028. They got to play Miami. And then in 2029, they get Alabama, Texas. So, yeah, I don't know. It's just stupid, some of it, man. I don't know.
I mean, if they want to do that, I feel like they should have like a point system for where like whoever you beat, that's how many points you get. Or if you lose to a team who was really not good at all, like you get the points like
deducted or something.
Yeah, kind of almost like how the BCS used to do points, but like there's points for good wins there, and there's points for like if you beat a team that you're supposed to beat, you barely get anything because your roster is so stacked up that the other team, your starters would be like your third string would be their starters. I mean, it's like giving them an automatic bid if they win 11 games, 12 games. I mean, if they go undefeated, yes, beat Miami. It's like Frank said, they should be in it. Like if Miami does do what they're supposed to do next year as well,
Yeah, I mean,
it should be an automatic bid. But
yeah, I mean, based off the schedule we're looking at, it basically that Miami game should be, assuming Miami does what we think they're going to do, right? Like Miami, if they fall flat, then if anything, now it looks even worse, right? Like, so they better hope that Miami looks excellent. But I mean, if that game should kind of decide if they get in or not, I think
It's like college basketball. They have the Ken Palm rankings, which I don't even want to try to understand that.
Yeah, I don't understand that at all.
But they do use a ranking system, a point system per se, that makes it clear why a team got into March Madness and why a team didn't. So there's something to fall back on. Right now, college football doesn't really have anything to fall back on. It's a committee that tries to explain their reasoning afterwards, but sometimes it misses the mark. And it's like anything else in college football. Everything's just floating around. It's out there, and we always question why things happen. But what do you say? Why don't we do our segment, and we'll close this bad boy out after. But we have a fun new segment. Right now, we're calling it This or That. We could think of something more clever in the future. And there's some fun questions because I think there's that we talked about in our group text that I threw in there, but there's also ones I thought of on the spot. So I'll start this one out for you guys. You might both agree on this one. It's the discussion that's been happening for several weeks now. It's Reuben, Bain, or Arvell Reese. Arvell, like the popcorn. Arvell Reese.
Oregon.
Yeah. I've been doing pretty good with saying Oregon, so.
You've gotten much better, but now you've got Orville Reese. I like that.
Arvell Reese. Arvell Reese. It's in my head.
We're both going to agree, and I'm going to lead with it because Kevin's going to have the same thing here. Like, obviously, if it's not hidden, draft season, we are very invested. We are Jets fans. I think we both want Arvell Reese. It would be funny if they turned a card in with it said Orville Reese. But anyway, we both want Orville Reese. I think that nothing against Bain, but, I do have questions about his sack totals and pressures versus sacks. I know that everyone's like, oh, he had 8.5 sacks here. What is it? 5.5 of them came in the last 3 games of the season, which I guess you could argue is like, cool, like he put up stats when it mattered most, but I have so many questions about the weaker competition. Where was he? He was non-existent. I also think that Reese, I know a lot of people feel that he can transition to an edge rusher. Some people say, no, he can't. He's only played off the ball linebacker. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't care what he does. The man could play pretty much, and he lines up in every position in the front 7. He's lined up over the center. He lines up on the outside. He plays all the linebacker positions. Like, that's a chess piece. And I think that when you're drafting that high, you take best available, and regardless of position, with limited exceptions, I think he's the best available. I think he's the best player. Yeah, nothing against Bain, but I just think Reese does more.
Yeah, I do agree that Reese is he can play pretty much any position on that front 7, that however you want him. So Bain is a little more limited. I feel like he transitions to an edge rusher in some schemes. Like I would say like a 3-4. He's like an edge rusher. But if you get him in like a 4-3, I would say he's even like a 5 tech D tackle or something, or a situational edge rusher. So I do like him. I know his knock is his T-Rex arms, but
this is the only defense you'll ever get from me of Bain or anybody for that matter. Let's stop talking about their arm length. Like everyone's like, the one I saw today was whatever. Let's not judge these guys based off what they do on the field, not their measurables that they can't control.
Exactly.
Like, come on.
So, I mean, it's just, I do feel like both are great, like, have the chance to be great players. I wouldn't mind either of them. Do I prefer Arvell? Probably just a little more. Just because he's a little more, he's got a little more flexibility in that front 7. But I wouldn't be upset about either.
Yeah. I probably am with you guys, Arvell Reese. And if you told me that, like, anyone from the top 5, we're not going with Ty Simpson when they needed a quarterback and we're going to pick Arvell Reese, I would tell you they picked probably the most talented person on the board and they just decided to go that route. But I will play devil's advocate a little bit for you guys. So PFF, Pro Football Focus college version, put out a tweet yesterday. It said Reuben Bain Jr. finished with 83 QB pressures in 2025, tied for the most ever in a season in the PFF college era. He was also on the Heisman watch list until late in the season. And Reuben Bain's always been throughout this entire season someone that they've considered is going to be a top 10 pick, if not a top 5 pick. He is a big guy playing defensive line, but he's also fast. It's like a truck hitting you when Reuben Bain hits you. I think he was the one who made Fernando Mendoza start to bleed during the national championship game because he came around and hit him from behind. But I mean, 8.5 sacks, yeah, it came at the end of the season, but it came when it mattered. So he brought it to a different level for the biggest games of the season. So I'm with Kevin where, I think Reuben Bain, if you land Reuben Bain in this draft, I think you're getting a defensive lineman. And we'll see how it translates to the NFL, but he's a big guy. He's going to be hard to stop. And in this era, defensive linemen aren't doing the rip and swim moves and stuff. They're just trying to bull rush you. And that's what Reuben Bain can do with his speed and size. Like I said, I'm with you guys.
I will be slightly upset if they take Bain. I have to be the guy on record to say it. And if I'm wrong, I'll be the first one to admit that I'm wrong. But Reese is the golden pony, so to speak, in this one.
Yeah, I think when they come out with top players on the board, the only reason Mendoza's going number one is because it's the Raiders have a QB need. And
position of need is always going to be higher up. I mean, it's just,
to me, I still stick by this. I think Reese is the most talented, the best player in this draft for the reasons that Mike kind of brought up, where in the front seven, you can put him anywhere. He can play linebacker if you want him to. He can play the edge. You could probably slide him inside if you really wanted to. He has the size to do that.
Yeah, I mean, he lined up over center previously, and he's rushing the outside. Also, one thing I know, they drop him back in coverage too at Ohio State quite a bit. It's a pretty big piece. Things that you could do with him. So, my thing is I like to, a risk versus reward type thing. If you take Reese, you're kind of in a position, which I think I said it to you guys, where you could end up in a situation like Isaiah Simmons was a couple years ago, where they took him. They weren't sure if he was a safety or a linebacker, but they're like, oh, he could play anywhere. And then it turned out he couldn't play anywhere. You know what I mean? And you could end up in a situation like that, technically, I guess. But I feel like the risk is you end up with a good linebacker, an NFL starting good linebacker, and your reward is the man goes out and gets you 17 sacks. I think you take the chance.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's going to be a lot of these players where it's the risk for...
I mean, Bain certainly can go out and rip off, 15, but for the reasons Kevin said, is he an outside end in a 4-3? Probably not. And in a 3-4, is he going to get those pass rush attempts? Probably not. I think he'll be a better football player than statistics will show. But in this situation, I think Reese is the better player.
Yeah, if you want someone who's going to light up the stat sheet, Reese is probably your guy. If you want somebody who's going to do the little things, then or do the things that are opening up opportunities for the rest of the defense, then Bain certainly can do that. But Jordyn, let's do the next one. Jordyn Tyson versus Carnell Tate. And who was the mock draft? Daniel Jeremiah, right? Who had
Makai Lemon.
Where'd they have them?
Kai was 13. Tate was at 16, and I want to say Tyson was 18 or 19.
Yeah, so he had them later than a lot of people because I think people have been going back and forth between Tyson or Tate being in the top 10, or both of them being in the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, a healthy Tyson. I mean, I saw him. I was watching the Arizona State games in the beginning of the year, and he was making crazy plays. He had that nice, what was that, a hurdle or jump from the 5-yard line into the end zone. He's a highlight reel, but I feel like Tate's a little more refined in all the other routes that can be ran, which is not as flashy, but I mean, it's something that will get the stats up. I feel like he doesn't drop the ball. He's a very complete wide receiver. So I feel like that reason I would take Tate a little higher than Tyson, just because he's the more refined receiver, and I feel like he stayed. I know he was out for a couple games this year, but I feel like he does stay a little more healthier. He's not going out and doing the extra highlight reel plays. So I feel like with that, he's a safer option.
So this one's a tough one because I actually think it's comparable to the situation with Reese versus Bain, only in this situation they both play the same position, technically. Yeah, Tyson's biggest issue, I think, that's going to hold him back is the medicals, right? Like, he's already had a big knee injury. And he's had, hamstring issues and things like that. But when it comes down to, like, if you asked me who's going to be the most talented wide receiver from this draft, like if I had to project, it's Jordyn Tyson is a physical freak in terms of what he can do. I know that he's not as big as Carnell Tate, at least height-wise. I know Carnell Tate's a little bit bigger. But Jordyn Tyson, I mean, the dude's a beast. Just for argument's sake, I like both guys. I want to make that very clear. Actually, to be fair, I like all the receivers in this draft, just being honest. But for argument's sake, I'm going to go with Jordyn Tyson simply because the medicals are scary, but this dude is a legit perimeter number one receiver in the NFL. Physically, he can stay healthy. I mean, the guy's an animal, plain and simple. Carnell Tate's kind of a field stretcher in terms of, like, I'm going to use another Ohio State comparison. He's kind of like an MHJ. He's going to run downfield. He's going to high point. He's not an Ibuka, which, to be fair, I think we all kind of saw it that way in the beginning of the year. But it's obvious that he's the guy that's going to stretch the field for you. And Jordyn Tyson can do that too. But the one thing about Tyson is that he's going to go over the middle and he's going to catch the ball. And if you watch when he runs hard. And he's a little bit thicker on the receiver side. I'm going to take my chances. Jordyn Tyson here, to me, like I said, if the medicals all check out, I don't think you can get it. I don't think there's a better talent in this draft. I'm banking on here that he's going to pan out, in this regard. And I think when you're drafting players, you're projecting. And, if 5 years down the road, if I told you Jordyn Tyson's a number one receiver, top five guy in the NFL, I don't think any of us are like, no, that's not going to happen. I think that's his ceiling. So I'm going to go Tyson here. I just think the dude is he could do everything. The only scary part is the knee and the leg.
To kind of go off like how you're comparing Tate to MHJ, you're kind of almost like comparing it to that same draft class, how Tate could be like a Marvin Harrison Jr. and then I feel like Tyson could be like neighbors at that point.
Yeah, actually, that's a very good comparison. I didn't think about that. Yeah, no, I didn't even think about that. I think that's fantastic. That's actually a really good idea. And I think you're right. I think spot on.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I think what's hurting both these players, and I say hurting, they're both going to go, at least middle of the first round. But to me, a lot of the teams that are looking for a wide receiver in this first round of this draft are looking for a second option. And so, like, take the Giants, for example, at 5. They've been linked to a receiver for the longest time. It's like, first off, if they want to take a receiver, they're probably going to trade back out of that 5th pick. But the second part is, like, if they stay in the 5th pick, there's a good chance they take, like, someone like Caleb Downs or that cornerback from LSU. And try
Delane.
Because, like, you have neighbors, you can get a wide receiver later, and, you can trade up into the late part of the first round and get one of those really talented receivers, or, get somebody in the second round because you're going to have an early pick in the second round. So, like, there's going to be options available. It doesn't have to be someone like Jordyn Tyson who's on par with neighbors. Like, you don't really need that right now.
But could you imagine how exciting that would be?
It would be really exciting. I think from the Giants' standpoint, they're like, we have holes elsewhere that we need to fill. We need somebody who's going to be immediate impact. And I think a lot of teams are falling into that. Like, Carnell Tate, to me, like, you're drafting him to be exactly like a Buka. Like, this is not the JSN of the world. Like, it's not that type of Ohio State receiver, in my opinion. It's the type of guy who can play Robin to a Batman. And, if you want to spend a first-round pick on that, like, that's awesome because he's a very talented player. But to me, like, he's never going to be the guy on your team. Or you're not a winning franchise, most likely, if Carnell Tate's the number one option on your team. Tyson, yeah, he could certainly turn out to be a first, a top 10, top 5 even receiver in the league. Like, that's his ceiling. But, the medicals have to, stay put or come into play. I don't know. It's just, I think Tyson, like, while his ceiling he's like the Dante Moore with the QB situation. Like, his ceiling's so high, but we just don't know what version of Tyson we're going to get. While, like, Carnell Tate's like the safe pick. It's kind of like
he's a much safer pick. Yeah, I think you're spot on with that, and I think it also comes down to what a team is looking for, right? Like, in a perfect world, Carnell Tate's going to end up somewhere in a perfect world, and this is not a perfect world, so it doesn't mean it's going to go this way. But I think in a perfect world, he ends up somewhere with an established number one. Whether if you're looking at like the top teams. So he ends up with a team like I'll just go down the list here: the Jets that have a Garrett Wilson, so he could just be that that number 2, or the Giants who have Malik Neighbors, who else can I go with here? Even the Saints that have a Chris Olave, or the Bengals, which they would never do it, but you want somebody that's established, and because Carnell Tate's never had to carry the load, so to speak, like he's always had, whether it be Marvin Harrison or Jeremiah Smith, so he's never been the focal point of a defense. I just, like Steve said, I don't know how he can handle that. I think he's going to be fine. I think he kind of reminds me of, like, not based off college career. I'm talking about what he could project to be, like Devonta Smith, where Devonta Smith is probably the best number 2 in the NFL and does his job. And I think that's probably what you're going to expect out of Carnell Tate. And I think that's fair. But like I said, Jordyn Tyson, I mean, I don't know who else is around him. I mean, the guy's been by himself his whole career, and he is the focal point of a defense, and he still gets his, so to speak. That's what appeals to me. But it's like super awkward because I want to talk about Mekhi Lemon too, because I really like him, but it wasn't an option.
He really, surprised me by his play when I watched the USC versus Michigan. How he gets open is unbelievable. But we'll have plenty of time to talk about Lemon. I actually just thought of this one from our previous text message thread, and I like this better than some of my other picks on here. Let's do Jeremiah Love versus Ashton Jeanty. Let's actually record.
Oh, this was mine.
Let's do it, though.
All right.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, no, let's do it. All right, so in this, obviously to lay it out, figurative scenario is last year, let's say Jeremiah Love came out, but let's say he had the stats that he had this year. Who's the better player? Who would you take? So this one's really, really, really hard, and I am a fan of Jeanty. Like I said, I know a lot of people were down on his rookie season, but I'm going to be honest with you. He averaged 3.7 yards per carry, but if you look at it, he had like 1,200 yards after contact. That means a man's getting hit as soon as he touches the ball, and he still found yards. Like he fought, like Steve said, he fought hard for every single yard. With all that said, Jeremiah Love's more athletic, I think, than Jeanty. I think that Jeremiah Love is probably, and this is really hard to say because I think that Jeanty projects to be like a top 5 running back in the NFL if they ever give him an offensive line. But like, I think Jeremiah Love just has a different gear. God, I can't believe I'm going to do it. I'm going to go with Jeremiah Love because I think that what he presents as a running back is much more difficult to game plan against. It's no slight at Jeanty. I think Jeanty's an all-world talent. I think that he is a fantastic running back, and he's going to be fantastic, and I'm a fan. But Jeremiah Love, I think, is the faster player. I think he's more talented in terms of overall, gameplay, whether it be running between the tackles, breaking it outside, catching the ball. I think that he excels a little bit more than Jeanty does. I like to it's a really horrible comparison, but Jeremiah Love projects to me a little more like a Saquon or a Christian McCaffrey, where he can go out and, he'll get you 1,000 yards rushing, but he also gets you 1,000 yards receiving. Whereas I just don't think Jeanty's going to do that. I think Jeanty's more of the guy who's going to ground and pound. And yeah, he'll get his catches. He had a lot of catches, but, that's not his game, so to speak, typically. At least it wasn't in college. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Jeremiah Love here. I like his athleticism, and I like what he presents and where he projects to be. I think he like I said, I put him in that caliber of type running back where he's like a Saquon or a Christian McCaffrey, where you can't just load the box against him because he'll run out and run a route against you and cut you up. So, but it's close. Like I don't want to make it seem like one's 1A, one's 1B in this scenario.
So yeah, I would go with that. I do like both, but I think preferably if I were to pick one, I'd pick Jeanty just because I feel like he got his better bulk towards the end of the season because they got rid of their offense coordinator
when he realized he had to carry the sorry-ass Raiders on his back, literally.
Exactly. But, I mean, the potential is there for – I feel like if we were talking about him on a totally different team, I feel like it would be like a totally different conversation just because I feel like when he went to the Raiders, there was no offensive line. There's him – the weapons are him, Bowers, and one wide receiver. I forget his name. Trey Parker, right?
Maybe. I don't know. Like they're so bad.
There's nobody there. They had Jacoby Myers. I mean, he played well for the Jaguars, but I just feel like there wasn't an option. Like there was no threat besides the running game. So
I mean, he literally. I'm arguing against my own point here, but he literally faced stack boxes every rush attempt, and the offensive line couldn't handle a straightforward pass rush, let alone 8. You know what I mean? Like it's. But yeah, I stand by what I said though.
But I mean, I do love Jeremiah Love. I feel like he can be one of those running backs, but I do feel like Jeanty could almost be. I mean, I know he's smaller and shorter than Derrick Henry, but I feel like he could be kind of up there with like a perennial running back like status. He's one you're always talking about, always putting up the stats. As long as, I mean, Henry did it with the Titans, who weren't great at all times, but I do feel like if the Raiders do get one or two more threats in the receiving game, that I feel like that take the box, like they unload the box a little bit. And maybe Fernando Mendoza even helps with that because, I mean, he could place the ball pretty much on those fade,
Throws are really nice. Yeah.
Back shoulder.
People.
Yeah, the back shoulder fades. But, I mean, as long as he gets some help, I feel like Jeanty's the better back.
Yeah. I agree with Kev. I'm going to pick Jeanty, but I'm also going to acknowledge that I think Jeremiah Smith is talented, and I would love for
Jeremiah Love.
Jeremiah
Smith is very talented.
Yeah, I would love for Jeremiah Love to be on my football team because he had an incredible season with limited carries this year. He had another running back that's going to get drafted in this year's draft that was in the backfield with him. So there was a lot of games he didn't even reach 20 carries. There were some games he didn't even reach 15 carries. But he's like, to me, Travion Henderson on steroids. Like, he really is, like, he's going to go the entire game where, like, you're going to be like, he only has, like, I don't know, 40 yards at halftime. And then he's going to break off for, like, a 60-yard touchdown in the third or fourth quarter. And you're going to be like, his stats were 150 rushing yards today and, you know, multiple touchdowns in the second half. But Jeanty, to me, Jeanty's a complete package. Like, when you think of a five-tool baseball player, like, to me, Jeanty is the five-tool baseball player of running back position. You know, he can move a pile if needed when he's not getting hit in the backfield like this Raiders offensive line did to him this year. He runs low and he's powerful. Have you seen his legs? They're huge. He also has like a burst of quickness. And I remember when we were watching like NFL draft videos of Ashton Jeanty, everybody kept on talking about his foot speed. He's incredible. Like, he gives the defense zero time to like register like he's coming. He's just so quick once he gets into open field. So the fact that he can run up the middle and move a pile, but also when he's in daylight, he can like go from 0 to 100 real quick. But then he's also going to be on the field like the entire game because he's very capable of catching the ball out of the backfield. And I believe Jeremiah Love is like that too. He's a very strong pass catching running back. But I don't know. There's something about Jeanty where I think, like you said, he can get to a top 5 running back in the league. Maybe Love can get there. We'll see. I guess it all depends where he ends up. Why don't we do one more, though? This will be the last one, and we'll save some of the other ones. Who's here to stay, in your opinion, or more likely here to stay, Miami or Indiana?
I think we're probably both going to agree with this one.
I mean, I would say on coaching alone, Cincinnati and Indiana, I feel like would be there. On talent, I mean, Miami's talent tree is always so high, so I feel like they have a better chance. They're also in the ACC, which is a conference that is not as good as the Big Ten or the SEC. I feel like they have.
Would you say they're on par with the Big 12?
No, they're better. I would watch an ACC game over a Big 12 game, but I just feel like there's more there. I mean, I do feel like both of them are going to be at the top of the college football standings every season because they're high caliber. Well, one's a high caliber just school that has so much history, and then you have Cincinnati, who's just a very good coach and gets the most out of all the players that he brings in.
Yeah, this one's tough because like both I think are there to like they're both really good recruiting teams. You know, Miami kind of hit the portal hard this transfer portal season. Obviously, nobody hit it harder than Indiana did. I mean, they brought in, you know, a legit starting offense and defense through the portal. I think they got 35 kids in the transfer portal last time we checked. You know, but you know, the one thing I'm going to say is that, you know, whereas this year Indiana had the one up on Miami at the quarterback position, I think it probably flips now. I don't know what to expect from Hoover. I know he's going to be good. He's going to put up stats. Yeah, it's really hard. I got to lean into it with Cignetti because I trust him more than I trust Cristobal. The U might be back. I just think that Cristobal is limited as a coach. And I don't, and if there's Miami fans that disagree with me, I get it. You guys just went to national championship, but the guy's limited, like just plain and simple, limited as an offensive coach. Curt Cignetti is not, and Curt Cignetti is he's just thorough. But on talent alone, I don't see either team dropping off. But if you ask me who's more likely to win a championship next season, Indiana. Curt Cignetti's that good. And I think that Josh Hoover, we're going to see, a version of him that we've probably never seen. But same with Mensah. He's really, really good without Miami. What is he going to be with Miami now?
Especially with freaking.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Tony's a beast. Now he's got nothing against Beck, but now he's got a legitimate thrower of the football, not a game manager.
He's going to have somebody that can throw the ball more than 20, 30 yards.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's got what I think is a premier quarterback in college football now. And, but yeah, I go back to the coaching. I mean, that's the deciding factor in this is the coaching. And Curt Cignetti's, he's just, I don't want to say he's the premier coach in college football, but certainly he's trending that way.
No, he definitely is getting into that category. From a short-term, thought process, I do think, Indiana's here to stay, and they showed it with their transfer portal class. And now, freshman recruits are starting to trickle behind, and you're just seeing an uptick in Indiana football all around. Miami certainly, between Mark Fletcher at running back, Tony at wide receiver, now they're going to bring in Mensah at receiver. They're not going anywhere either. They lose a lot on defense, but they still have some talent there as well. But that's just a year approach. If I have to think long-term for these two sides, I don't think the Curt Cignetti to the NFL conversations are going to go away. He may have silenced them this season, but it kind of reminds me of a Jim Harbaugh situation. Yeah, Harbaugh was, he coached the 49ers earlier in his career, but then there started being that itch where he was like, I don't have a Super Bowl. I really want a Super Bowl. Teams are approaching me every single season, seeing what they can do to get me to coach their team. And finally, he gave in, and you could say it was because of what was happening around him. He was eventually going to get a show clause. And I know Cignetti silenced the rumors this year, said, I'm a college football coach. And plus the perfect opportunity where he could have coached at Pittsburgh was there for Cignetti. But I think as they get louder and louder and as Indiana has more success, there is always going to be the possibility that Cignetti's hey, I'm 60-something years old. I may never get to coach in the NFL again. Let me give this a try. So if that were to ever happen, I think Indiana goes back to the dark ages, which it was bad for Indiana. 3 bowl victories in the history of that football program leading up to this season. They doubled their bowl victories this year by winning 3 games. So incredible. And if Cignetti stays, it's I don't know. It's let the good times roll. But if he were to ever leave, Miami's always going to have that upper hand because they're Miami football, and they always seem to creep back into competition. But I would say that's an episode. There was a lot there. I actually when I was sitting down and planning this episode, I didn't think we were going to have all these talking points tonight, but it just kept growing and growing. So I'm happy that off season is starting off on a positive note. I'm actually really excited because we're going to combine some of the 2026 fall headlines with NFL draft now moving forward. So we can officially turn the page. We can start talking NFL draft more. And I know that's, you guys love it. So I'm sure you're excited. I do want to get our top 12 or our early top 12 in there at some point. So maybe that'll be next episode with some NFL draft talk. But now it's full steam ahead. It's NFL draft conversation. So good episode, boys. Thank you to JJ Buchanan for coming on. Always fun getting a Michigan guy on, a Michigan man, I should say. A lot of good talking points today between the Mensah conversation, the Dabo conversation. What else did we talk about? Deion Sanders in Colorado and what he's implementing.
Well, we went on a whole tangent about the NCAA. I mean, that was worth its price of admission on its own.
Yeah, definitely. So, this was an episode, important episode, I would say, some important topics. Hopefully you stuck around. Yeah, we'll be back soon, so continue to follow us. We'll be active throughout this week, but thanks for...
Please engage with us on our socials. We do, like I said, Steve said, and we do answer. But, more importantly, if you engage with us and you enjoy the conversation, drop a like or a follow. Just follow us. We do some clickbaity things that are worth watching.
Yeah, we're gonna
Sorry,
turn.
the Big 12.
We're gonna turn into Josh Pate, I think. Just start doing things so that people view us. We should start saying outlandish stuff. I think that's the future of this podcast. But
Listen, the one thing you want to, Steve's right. We definitely say, we should say outlandish stuff. But the one thing that you'll always be able to find here is if you don't like the Big 12, we are your podcast. We like everything else except the Big 12.
this is a
We'll talk Sun Belt football.
This is a Big Ten podcast right here.
Yeah, this is a Big Ten podcast, and you know what? We get a lot of people that are like, I've seen comments where people actually will say something along the lines of like SEC, homers, and I saw that on one of our videos, and I was kind of like, bro, what?
Yeah.
We like the SEC, but we're definitely not SEC homers.
Yeah. Well,
We just hate the Big 12. I mean, it's just, man.
We literally, Freck's still contemplating his next team, but
No, I made my choice. I chose Kurt Signetti.
okay. So again, there's all
I have made my decision, and I've decided that Kurt Signetti, in God I trust. In this case, in Kurt Signetti I trust.
even before that, we were all Big Ten supporting teams. So
Yeah, no, I'll always have an affinity for Rutgers. They're going through some tough times, but Kurt Signetti is just like, I used to be a big Nick Saban fan, and then after he retired, there was it's been a couple years where I've been like, but Kurt Signetti is the most fascinating human I've ever seen. I hope Josh Hoover is as fascinating with Kurt Signetti as Fernando Mendoza was. I don't think it's going to be the case. But
good, I think.
is he awkward? Because that's what made Mendoza great, is the awkwardness. No, see, that's what made the Kurt Signetti Fernando Mendoza so good, was that awkwardness. They're both weird.
Yeah.
And I, it's funny, whenever anybody says Kurt Signetti's name, all I can think of is Google me. But yeah, please engage with us. Please follow us, and we do our best to answer everybody in the comments. Like I said, Steve does a really good job answering. I'm always checking them, and I do comment under my personal account, which I will fix so people can find me if that's something they want to do, because it seems like people always want to shit talk me on the videos that we post about me. So and it's cool. I enjoy it. So please just don't forget the follows mean everything to us, as well as the engagement. So
Yeah.
Please.
Definitely. So that's a wrap. We'll catch you guys next week. Good stuff, boys.
Absolutely.